All right, let's do this. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another cigar garage talk with the Uper Farmer here. How's everyone been? Glad to have you back here, back out in the garage. So, what's new and exciting? Well, first, what are we smoking today? We have the Rocky RP. I think it's Rocky Pearl. I forget what the RP stands for. If anyone out there enjoys cigars, you've obviously heard of them. The number 6. It's one of the cigars I got from the Thompson sampler pack. Nice cigar, dark, very nice draw. Very, very nice draw on this cigar. Very happy with that. Decided to bring back a beer for tonight. We are having Campfire Amplifier from Dogfish Brewing, or Dogfish Head Brewing. I've had a couple of their beers. They're usually not too bad. This one I was buying a 6-pack for a little Sunday grill out. This one just sounded interesting, so I decided to pick it up. Not much of a Dogfish fan. I wouldn't say it's one of my go-to brands, but I'll enjoy them every now and then. This one's another stout. Almost zero head on it. Not a good sign when going into a stout, but let's give her a try. Creamy. Whoop. As the bottle goes down. I could see that being something you'd drink at a campfire to kind of relax and listen to someone play some music. Creamy, almost sweet. Not what I'd put as a Hallmark stout, but I'm going to drink it, and I think it'll be all right. So how have you guys been? I've been doing all right. These videos are very much out of order. This one, even though I'm shooting in the midst of the homeschool series that I'm currently producing with my wife and kids to explain about homeschooling, this video won't come out for a few weeks after that series has aired. That series has been a lot of fun, though. I don't know. As I talked about in the beginning, this is all experimental. We're playing with stuff, having fun with stuff, seeing what works. Talking about homeschooling really did. It was a lot of fun. So it might be something, I might pursue that more. I didn't really want to turn my creative outlet towards homeschooling specifically, but it does mesh and bind a lot of what I like to do. A lot of, again, self-sufficiency. That's what homeschooling is all about. Trusting yourself to educate your children. The weird projects I do, it can all be kind of laid out as those real-life learning or just-in-time learning, experiential learning. Lots of hobbies and crafts that I like to do, and just getting in trouble in general. Who knows? Maybe this channel will pivot to more of a homeschooling base, but time to come. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully when I get this out of the experimental series, a little more direction to it. I don't mind it, mind you. This is a lot of fun for me, just to share my viewpoints, put them out there for the world. Granted, I know no one's really interested, and I'll never be as popular as some of the big YouTubers, but as I kind of talked about, I like to do this as the art, as an expression. This is kind of like my journal, my thinking journal, just putting it out there. I enjoy the process. I enjoy the thought of it, the theory of putting out there something artistic. This is an art form after all. And putting it out into the universe. It's a neat idea. A lot of people won't ever do that. They'll come up with lots of reasons. Oh, I'm scared. I'm nervous. Oh, it's not going to be any good. So they never try. They never do it. Anyhow, that's kind of just some ramblings again. Like I said, this is me being artistic. I do like making movies. I like watching movies. I like cinematography, the idea, the theories behind it. Where it'll take you, where it'll go. Of course, that a few people will probably be willing to point out, doesn't hurt that I'm very dyslexic. So writing a story down is difficult, not impossible. I'll go over that in a future episode. My dyslexic pride that I have. But this is more of a freeing for me, a storytelling, a one-on-one, vocally, as traditionally all of our history was passed down. Greatest literature that we have, from Beowulf on to even the Bible at points, was only ever passed down through oral history. One person would tell another, the story then would be told to another, and so on and so forth. That'll definitely be a topic for a future video. Dyslexia, storytelling, cinematography. I'm just got to mark this one in my planner there to come back and watch the beginning, because that's 3 good videos that I think is worth exploring. But tonight, the last video that you'll see is about the prison story I shared. The gentleman who taught me a lesson about making priorities, really putting what's important to me first. And I promised I was going to talk about my big mistake, my huge mistake in life that took me almost 10 years to correct. And then it took me, 3-5 years after that to work on it to finally get it right. And that is setting my priorities. So, when I was a young kid, I got very interested in EMS. Saving lives, putting my own life down for another. Firmly, you can talk to my wife about it and some of my friends, I didn't believe I'd live past the age of 26. I liked adventure. I loved risking my life, especially for others. The idea of it was very romantic, and I got sucked in by it. EMS, being a good paramedic, a good provider, really meant a lot to me. The thrill of helping someone, it's an amazing addictive feeling. Now, of course, saving someone, let's say a cardiac arrest, or you give someone the right treatment, or you find that mystical mystery problem that's wrong with them and you're able to correct it. Cloud nine. Deliver a baby, you don't touch the ground for 2, 3, 4 weeks easily. Convert a code, have that person live to see another day. In your darkest moments, you can sometimes go back to that one moment and it brings you out of it. That's what I learned EMS was. It's a drug. It really is. The adrenaline rush, the authority you feel. My wife one time got to see me during an emergency. Car accident had happened. I pulled over. I was starting to help people. I got my medic commanding voice in and started directing people and using some choice language towards some people who were not doing as they were told. Blood flying everywhere, broken bones, people crying. It was beautiful. Beautiful chaos. And got done, jumped back in the car, drove off with my wife, and she asked me to get out of the car. She didn't ask, she actually told me to get out of the car. She said, "You're not my husband. You're not the man I married. The man I married is a kind, loving individual. He's not this overly aggressive, very strong, very domineering, very angry, ordering people around." She just really hadn't seen that. And I've heard that story repeated time and time again from people. who are in EMS, and their spouse, who usually is not in EMS, gets to see their EMS persona. And it scares the living crap out of them every time. Because we become other people. Now, I am getting to the actual story about my biggest mistake that took me 10 years to fix, and I'm still working on perfecting. But I need you to understand what it's like to be a public servant, if it's something that you're meant to do. I don't like to glorify EMS and fire and law enforcement, because I don't want people to get into it thinking they're going to have this hero, become a hero, and they're going to get this great rush from it. It's not for everyone, 100%. And I'm very honest when I talk to my students. It's not for everyone. But for me, it was. More than one person would describe it as almost my perfect drug. I became someone else. So I describe that so you know where my blunder came in. Just after becoming a paramedic, I got married to my wonderful wife. Had our first kid. I think we were married for a year and a half when we had our first kid. 14 months maybe. And I told my wife and myself, family was number one for me. That was the most important thing. It's what I needed. It's what I wanted. My family completed me, made me whole. I tell people I'm a family man. I love my family. But it was a lie. At that time in my life, it was one of the biggest lies I tried to get myself to believe, my wife to believe, my friends to believe, my extended family to believe. Because it wasn't. I was a paramedic, and that's what was important to me. I would miss birthdays and holidays and important events. If they called looking for coverage on a shift, I'd cover it. Late nights, they'd call 2 o'clock in the morning. We have a patient that needs to go out. I would take it. Many times without hesitation, especially in the first few years of our marriage. I came up with your traditional excuses, of course. Well, honey, I'm new at the job. I got to prove to myself. I got to prove myself that I'm a company man. I'm a good employee, and they should give me a raise and keep me on. I was able to use that excuse for about 2 years, maybe 3. I'll go 3 years. At the 3-year mark, calls would come in late at night. My wife would go, "You're a well-vested paramedic, on your way to becoming one of the shift leaders." "Oh, but honey," I'd say, "as a shift leader, I got to show my subordinates what it's like to be a good paramedic. So I got to take this transfer." Well, it lasted for a year or two, but that got old. But then I started getting specialty certifications and trainings. I really started to master my craft as a paramedic and became damn good. So the story changed, the excuse changed. I remember after a long shift, now we did 60 hours in a row. That's a long shift. I do remember, though, that some other people had called in, so I'd actually worked earlier that week. And Friday night had finally rolled around. It was time for me to get off work, so I got off work and went home. Blizzard kicked up, and without fail, 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. We had plans to, I believe, go downstate, go shopping somewhere, take my wife and kids out because I hadn't seen them in almost a solid week. Call comes in, they're looking for a medic to take a critical transfer. So my wife is back there yelling, "No, no, you can't take it. You're not available. You're drunk." I didn't have anything to drink that night. Just trying to get me to understand that I shouldn't take it. So I put the station on hold, and I tell the wife what the transfer is. 6-month-old, severe case of RSV. Chances are it's going to respiratory arrest on the trip. And yours truly was damn good, really good at pediatric calls. It didn't scare me. I was a good medic for taking them. Had a lot of pediatric certifications and trainings. So I decided to start guilting my wife. I looked her in the eye and said, "Honey, you can pick right here, right now. I'll stay home, but that means that kid's probably going to die." Of course, having a few children at the time, she reluctantly agreed to let me go. Transfer went off fine, without a hitch. Kid did respiratory arrest twice en route. I was able to get him breathing again, though. As far as I know, he's still alive today. I didn't really keep track of a lot of my patients. Just not something I did. If I ran into them and whatnot, they'd give me some updates. Every now and then we'd have one stop by the station, or I'd bump into them in town. And it was something I didn't really do. I didn't. Some of the medics would keep tabs on their patients. I didn't. Unknowingly to me, I was not putting my family first. It was the biggest mistake I'd ever made. I lied to myself, saying my family was the most important, when in truth, being a medic was. It took 3 wake-up calls. First, I had a good ambulance accident. Was going to pass a vehicle. They looked like they were going to yield to the right. Instead, they were just taking a sweeping left-hand turn. I swerved to maneuver to miss, and they made contact with my vehicle, causing me to spin off, hit a telephone pole, hit a fire hydrant. It was a little bit of a wake-up call. The accident wasn't horrible. It was life and death, but I was fine with laying down my life. One, I had the satisfaction that I knew if I died on the job, my wife would be well taken care of. The company I worked for had excellent death and disability insurance. Plus, I had bought quite a bit personally to make sure my wife would be covered. Because again, I didn't believe I was going to live to be an old man. I did make it past 26 before this event happened, and that kind of messed with me a bit. Actually, living past the date you thought you were going to die. But this event really showed me that I wasn't bulletproof. But I was still gung-ho. Back on the rig, I believe the next day even. We were short-staffed. I remember taking massive amounts of Motrin. One of the ladies who worked for us was a registered masseuse who tried to get the knots out of my back. I think I, excuse me, probably just took a bunch of ice packs and hot packs and intermittently changed them. Because again, I was fine with death. Even to this day, death doesn't bother me. My death, I'm not scared of it. I know what's going to happen when I die. I know I'm going to be judged. I don't say I'm going straight to heaven. I never will. But I was fine with that. I believed I had lived my life good enough that I was at least going to go to purgatory. I was very selfish. I didn't realize that until the next event happened. The next event was my wife had a traumatic miscarriage and almost died. I actually had to be the medic to treat her. It was one of the most horrifying experiences, but not for why you think. Again, I'm fine with death. I still am an awesome paramedic. I knew how to treat her. I knew how to save her. But when I rolled on the scene to take care of her, I had to make one of the most absolutely devastating, soul-crushing decisions at that moment. I could make one of two choices. I could not function and do both. Either I could be the distraught, loving, caring husband who wanted nothing more than to see his wife take her next breath and live and go on, and support her and hold her hand and be there for her emotionally and be strong as a husband should be. Or I could choose to be the paramedic that'd save her life. Again, I couldn't be both. If I chose to be the paramedic, I had to be cold. I had to cause my wife pain. I couldn't hold her hand. I couldn't tell her everything was going to be all right. I had to be truthful with her and honest like I am with all my patients. I had to do assessments. I had to be realistic about treatment modalities, about statistics, what best gave her the best chance to survive, what were the risks. I had to make the tough calls. So you can't be both. If I was to be the husband, I would have to be scared and cower and lose hope even, or only have hope. If I was the medic, I had to be the biggest, baddest badass there ever was, like I had been to so many people before. I chose to be the paramedic. I abandoned my wife. I left her. It's one of the things I know to this day, had I chose to be the husband, she'd be dead now. Without a doubt, she'd be gone. I had to be the paramedic. Well, I didn't have to. I made the choice to. A choice that really wrecked me for a very long time, because I do feel like I abandoned my wife. That was, unfortunately, par for the course. I chose to be a medic instead of being her husband. Like I had done so many times before for birthday parties, anniversaries, family functions, trips into town, stupid stuff like going out to dinner. I had always chose to be the paramedic. I never chose to be her husband. It sucked. And I wish I could say that in that moment was what I needed to shock me back into reality, and everything was copacetic. But there was one more realization I had. Got her to the ER. It was actually interesting. I was so much the medic and acting like a medic. It was my partner who looked at the nurses and said, "Oh, by the way, that's person on the table there that we're working on. That's the medic's wife." The shocked look on everyone's face, because they didn't know. I wasn't treating her like my wife. I was treating her like a patient. There was even a look of horror on one or two of the nurses. They weren't sure if they were supposed to then be the significant other of the woman on the table, since her husband clearly wasn't going to be. We did the procedures we had to, got blood into her, gave her the proper medications that I don't carry in the ambulance what the hospital had, and got her into surgery. I got to sit alone in the waiting room, as so many people do when waiting for someone to go into surgery. Of course, I knew the odds. The doctor didn't have to lie to me and say, well, we're going to do the best we can. It was a long shot. Doc was even honest. He told me, we're going to do, you know the odds. We're going to try anyway. It's literally what the surgeon told me, and Damn it, I knew he was right. The odds were stacked up against her. As I sat there alone, a couple of thoughts came across my mind. The first being, I had 2 children at home. I had written my children letters. There was a letter actually I had in my locker. So it basically said, if I don't make it home, deliver this to my children. It was my last words to them. I had plans for how my family would continue without me. I had never once thought, how would my family continue without my wife? It dawned on me what her life would be like if I had died in that first ambulance accident. The unknown of how to raise 2 children with a one-spouse household. It's a horrifying thoughts I had. How do I go on? How do I explain this? How do I continue to raise my children without my wife? And then, of course, it made me think, how could my wife raise my children if I was to have died? Thankfully, she lived. It sounds kind of condescending, but if there was ever something that could truly save a marriage, it's a near-death experience like that. Our relationship changed drastically after that. It was amazing. We became closer. We loved each other more. Silly, stupid fights that we used to get in, we didn't anymore. Why? Stupid stuff. You didn't do the dishes. We didn't fight about that anymore. We were just glad we had each other. I was glad she lived. And I'd love to sit here and say at that moment I decided, all right, I'm going to put my family first. But that addiction of EMS, that addiction of saving lives, it's just like any drug. It's hard to kick. Even when you think you've hit rock bottom, if you haven't honestly hit rock bottom, guess what? It's out there. Your true rock bottom, and you're going to hit it. Hopefully you have support structures around you to help. During this time, after her accident, after she almost died, I did become an alcoholic for a while. I was drinking a lot to deal with the anxiety of what life would have been like without her. I drank away the idea of my death affecting her. Thankfully, I got some help for it. I had a good support structure. Saw a counselor. All the good stuff you're supposed to do. I nipped it in the butt early because I knew I had to. I was still choosing to be a paramedic first after that, but I did my best to put my family first, of course. And then I got into another ambulance accident. Hollywood-style ambulance accident. Ambulance getting smashed in the side, people being thrown, many people being injured. Myself wrecked my knee, hit my back really hard, hit my head. And I almost died. And I knew I almost died. And all those feelings came rushing back of my wife having to raise our children alone. It was after that second accident. I knew I had to change. I knew I had to start putting my family first. Mind you, I had rose in the ranks of the ambulance company. I was an assistant director. I was on track to become the director. I was on track to become an instructor coordinator and probably be running the local county EMS education program, in charge of it all. But that was the ambulance. That was not my priority in life. I didn't want that. I wanted the family, my family, to be most important. So I made the very tough choice to quit my addiction, cold turkey as it were, and put my family first. I quit the ambulance job. I quit the assistant director. Still went on to go do teaching because I figured teaching was something I could do to be with my family, be home with my family. I got a job that had regular hours. Granted, it was still EMS based, but I was able to be home at night. The company I chose to work for didn't call you on the nights and weekends. If you were off, you were off. As my boss told me, once you sign into work, we signed in on Fridays, and we worked for 7 days in a row, and then we had 7 off. He said, when you sign in on Friday, you're mine. But when you sign off on Thursday, I don't care if you go to Disney World, Europe, get a second job, travel around the world twice, because that's your time. It was an amazing thing. I never had that before. A company that supported me having a family. To boot, the company that I worked for got bought out by a larger company that didn't exactly share those views. They believed that you were theirs 24/7. They could call you on your 7 off and recall you. They recalled many employees. Even on one went to Texas to go see some family. They gave him 48 hours to get back or else he was fired. I started to drink the Kool-Aid that family came first, because they were now my new addiction. So, even though I had a great job, great pay, the company's policies drastically changed, so I couldn't make my family first, so I quit. Shocked the hell out of everyone. Quit and left the area on a whim, because my family had to come first. Now a lot of you are like, oh my God, but your family can't come first because how are you going to support them? How are you going to take care of them financially? As that drug dealer prisoner who I talked about the last episode showed me, there's other ways. My family needed me to be home. My kids needed me to be home. They needed consistency. They needed me to be with them. And I couldn't do that working for a company who wouldn't let me put my family first. So that then started my finding careers that would allow me to put my family first. To the point I'm at now, where I do believe even though I'm working for the state, not the favorite job I've ever had, but it does cover the bills and allows me to put my family first. I'll sit here and be honest. I miss my addiction. When the whole beer flu kicked off, it took a lot of prayer, a lot of guidance, and sheer will not to go sign with an ambulance, not take one of the many contracts throughout the country that would pay you mint to work in their beer flu clinics and covering gaps because EMS systems were failing due to this little crowned virus. But I said no. Put my family first. I was there for them. Still am. I'm proud of that. Come a long way. Long way. Since that naive little shit who joined a ambulance corps and became a medic and lied to everyone, lied to himself, and said his family came first. For those of you who honestly know me, you'll know that was the hardest thing I ever had to do. Again, addictions are hard to fight, and EMS can be an addiction. Still to this day, I identify myself as a paramedic. But I'm honest. My family does come first now. I'll take care of them. I'll look out for them. I'll watch out. I'll sacrifice better pay, better promotions, more money so I can be with them. But I think of all the time I lost. Years and years of time I lost with my family. It was a huge slap in the face when I finally realized that. Do you know my family had traditions around Thanksgiving? I hadn't actually ever spent a Thanksgiving with my family for about 8 years. 8 Thanksgivings, our first 8 Thanksgivings I never once spent home. They had traditions I wasn't even involved in. I didn't even know about because I wasn't there for it. Anyhow, this is getting kind of long and rambly to the point. I do hope that you aren't lying to yourself, or you can step back and reevaluate it. What is the most important thing in your life? Are you lying to yourself? Are you saying it's family when it's your job? Are you saying it's to become a better actress or actor when in truth you couldn't care less about acting? You'd much prefer fishing. Who knows? The second you're honest with yourself, had I told my family, my wife, that you know what, being a paramedic, that's what's the most important to me. One, she could have then evaluated, did she really want to be my wife? Or did she want someone who was more family orientated? But if nothing else, you won't miss out. Now I hope I do live long enough to make it up to my family. Prove to them that they are first. They do now believe it, especially my youngest children who didn't have to grow up during that time, but my 2 oldest children definitely. It was interesting when the beer flu hit, they knew where I wanted to be. It scared the shit out of them. They didn't want me doing that. They knew what it meant if Dad was going to be a paramedic. That meant that he wasn't going to be their father anymore. They'd be coming second. So hopefully you can heed the story of a drug-dealing prisoner I shared with you last time, and then a paramedic who lied to himself this time, and realize that there's more to life. You just need to be honest with yourself. As long as you're honest, even if it is, I don't want to be a family man or a family woman, be honest with what is your priority. And stuff will kind of fit. It'll mesh. It'll work out. Anyway, there's some ramblings about not lying to yourself, what to do if you are. My little story bearing my biggest mistake I ever made in my life to the world. So with that, I hope everyone stays safe out there, and we'll talk to you later.